Alright, we're now into our 5th lesson for the Stylized Game Weapons class. In this lesson, we will finish up the ZBrush sculpt by sculpting in all of those stylized details such as these really large cracks in the stone up here. Now first, before we can actually get into these details, I would like to quickly show you how to take this initial stone mesh and how to duplicate it, rescale it, and reposition it so that we can start sculpting the details for like this bottom piece or these side pieces right here. So I select this top stone piece right here. The first thing I do is I go to Subtool, I go to Duplicate, and then go to Deformation. Make sure I mirror in the Y-axis because I want this to mirror the Y, just go to on there. So I hit Mirror. Zoom in a little bit. Then move this down a little bit. Then put transparency on, but take off ghost. I prefer just to have transparency on. First thing I'm going to do a general scale. I hit E is the shortcut, and I grab the last right circle, and I hold down Shift, and I do a general kind of scaling like this. Use the move tool again to kind of move it back into place. And then the other thing I can do, say if I want to just scale this in the Y-axis, I can actually use the move tool and then find a pivot with this first original circle. And then if I hold down Shift and move up or down at this last circle right here, I can actually scale it in just the Y-axis. So I'm going to scale it about like that. And maybe I'll scale it up a little bit more. Move that down a little bit. Alright, that should be good for now. For these side pieces right here, I'm going to go ahead and take this original shape again. I'm going to go to Subtool. I'm going to Duplicate. And now, very important, the first thing I want to do is make sure that the X-axis symmetry is turned off because I want to translate this in the X-axis. So go to Transform, take off X-axis, Move tool, make a transpose line, move it over, transparency on. Start to scale this guy down quite a bit. Move this guy into place. And then I'm going to start to rotate it as well. And I just use the R key for the shortcut. Start rotating over a little bit, like so. We're going to need to scale this even a little bit more. In about there. And then move it in. There, that should be good. And now for the rest of it, all I really need to do is just duplicate mirror in the Y-axis for this bottom one, and then I can then actually merge both those two subtools, duplicate and merge in the X-axis to get these other two over here. That's really all I did for all of the additional sort of elements. I just duplicated it, mirrored it, and maybe did some scaling, some general scaling, or some Y-axis constrained scaling. So I'm going to go ahead and load up the version that has all those kind of base meshes all repositioned and rescaled. So there we go. And you know, later on, if you can't quite get the scale you need through the transpose tools, you can always just do like masking. You can kind of go ahead and do more of a delicate mask and then use the move tool or use the transpose tools again, something like that. And if anything gets looking kind of odd, you can kind of smooth it out or remesh it if need be. But now we're ready to start sculpting in these huge major dings. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm actually going to first kind of block it out through things such as like the clip curve brush. And then once I've done that, I will go in with the standard brush to sort of elaborate upon it if I need to, like make it more specific. And then I can use things like the hard polish brush, the pinch brush, things like that to kind of really clean it up. But the one thing that we really haven't covered that much at all yet is going to be something I'm going to use right here for this piece right here. And so what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to basically mask out the part that I want to delete, and then I'm going to delete that piece, and then there's going to be this top part up here that then just going to basically translate, move up, and then rotate over. So what I do is I basically make a mask. So I know I want to delete basically a shape roughly like this. So I mask it, I then go to polygroups, and then I make a polygroup from masking, and I click polyframe to double check that. And then now what I want to do is I want to Control-Shift-click this middle part twice to make it not visible. We can turn polyframe off now. And then I'm going to go to Geometry, Modify Typology, Delete Hidden, and Close Holes. And then I can also kind of go ahead and go back to polygroups, auto groups, subtool, group split. This will allow me to take just this piece right here, move it up a little bit, rotate it like so, and then actually I'm going to go ahead and scale a little bit as well. Something like this. That's a quick way that you can basically sort of delete aspects of a mesh if you want like a really big crack. You can not only do clip curve brushes, but you can mask it out and then basically just delete it. So once I've done something like that, at some point I might have to remesh this. But usually what I kind of go ahead and do is with the Trim Dynamic brush, which is the shortcut is BTD. I go along these really kind of more artifact edges, these kind of odd looking edges, and I take the Trim Dynamic brush and I kind of go ahead and add a slight bevel to it. Just to add a little bit more irregularity. Something kind of like that. And then, maybe I'll also go in with hard polish brush. Just kind of finish that up. So that's basically what I might do for that. Now for this piece, I'm going to be making these big dings with the clip curve brush. So I go to brush, go ahead and select clip curve. And I know we kind of used this a little bit in some previous lessons. But yeah, so remember, like the space bar can move it around. And if you hit Alt twice, you can get a angle instead of more of a curve. So if I Alt twice, I can get an angle like this. Hit Alt twice again until I get roughly, trying to mimic basically this shape right here. So that should work right about there. Oh, I do actually need to make sure that I have x-axis symmetry off. Very important. So if I want to have a little bit of a curve there. Just like that. That one didn't quite work for me. There we go. Something like that. Then I'm going to go ahead and block it in over here as well. Hold down Alt to do a reverse. Because you find that the clip curve you're making, if the dark gradient is pointing in the opposite way that you want to, if you just hold down Alt as you release, it'll go ahead and do the opposite. I can go ahead and put in this clip curve right here. More tiny one. So these aren't exactly completely accurate, but what I will basically do now is just kind of go ahead with the smooth brush, or start with the standard brush. I'm not going to worry too much, but I'm going to go ahead and block this in. You can be a little more careful when you're doing this on your own. But I really just kind of look at the concept, try to get the general shape at this point, and really kind of feel out how I want this form to be, how I want this crack to kind of look. You might get to a point where you're going to have to remesh it, like right here, that's starting to look a little odd. That happens, you can either remesh it, dynamesh it, something like that. Again, I also always try to use the Trim Dynamic brush over some of those clip curve edges that are just a little too precise. Something like that. draw out the outside edges as well if I need to. And you might get to a certain point where part of the mesh is starting to look a little wonky. What you can do is use the hard polish brush this one, and kind of try to go up fairly close to the edge, and really kind of play around with how sort of hard you're pressing down with your tablet, and smooth out certain areas. You kind of go back and forth. Polish brush, smooth out a little bit. Polish brush. You can also go in here with the pinch brush again, like we were using before. Oh, make sure lazy mouse is on. Hit one a bunch of times. The catch it before. So yeah, you basically get the idea for that. Again, I just kind of keep alternating between trim dynamic, different polish brushes, smooth, standard brush. Before you know it, you can definitely get the shape that you're looking for. It shouldn't take too long to get a huge kind of crack like that, a really nice stylized crack. So I'm going to go ahead and in a second here load up the version, basically the final version with all the cracks. And then there's one other quick thing I want to show you as well, so you kind of get some nice undulations and forms for something that's kind of more of a stone. But again, I just kind of want to show you, I do kind of like to go ahead and right after I click curve, use trim dynamic brush to kind of make the edge not quite so pristine. The clip curve brush is really good for getting that initial cut in there, and then it is good to kind of then go in and sort of modify it a little bit, make it seem a little less precise, I guess you'd say. Alright, so I'm going to load up the final of that. Actually, this is what looks like when all the stones are cut, just so you know. I went ahead and did clip curve, cuts all the way over there. And this is what it looks like when I sort of use standard brush. In addition to this, use the hard polish, use pinch, all that kind of stuff. You also notice in a couple other areas I did kind of go ahead and make some of those other bevels maybe a little bit more sort of extreme. I just want to make sure that from a distance, all the forms kind of read well. Even in the sculpt phase, I know in the diffuse, it can be very easy to kind of pull some stuff out, but I want to make sure it looks good in the sculpt as well. But yeah, so all this was achieved just through clip curve, standard brush, hard polish. You can tell a lot of these edges over here, or these planar surfaces, are still fairly smooth, even after maybe remeshing and all this kind of stuff. To kind of get smooth planar surfaces, that's really what all those polish brushes are for. It's really, really good for that. Alright, so one other thing I wanted to show you for basically detailing out in ZBrush is, say, this is one way that you can sculpt a stone. Like, I'm going to sort of go ahead and do a more simplified version. But, one thing that you could do is, if you're making like some kind of stone in your weapon, you might want to have a little bit more variation or undulation in the form, especially if you want to look a little different from the other hard surface elements. So in that case, what you can do is basically kind of extend some lines. Like right here in this concept, you see these kind of lines right here. I figured I was going to go ahead and the diffuse map or within 3D code kind of paint that in. But you can also kind of start to achieve that here now in ZBrush, so that it's within the normal map. So what I can do with standard brush, do a very sort of severe line like this. Maybe smooth it out a little bit, and I get some kind of line going. You don't have to necessarily be that precise. Again, you can use pinch brush a little bit if you want. Something like that. Again, I just use the hard polish brush, kind of leading up to that point. Smooth it a little bit. I'll kind of go back and forth, trying to get that to where I want it to be. maybe even go with the remove tool to make it just seem a little less sort of regular. If you want, you can even do like reverse pinch a little bit. That's the basic idea. You can even just use pinch right away, get something look like that. So for that, I didn't even use standard brush or anything. Just went straight for the pinch. And then smooth it out, and then you can use things like hard polish. Fairly quickly, you can now see there's these additional sort of undulations in the form. If you want to take it even another step further, you can kind of have it more, to have the surface kind of really cave in the center here. So I can kind of, with the standard brush, roughly kind of feel the form out. How much do you want it to sort of cave in certain areas? And then what I do is I basically, ZBrush is kind of doing an emergency save right now, but standard brush, you can kind of really sort of figure out how deep you want part of the form to be. And then you really just kind of smooth over with the smooth brush, maybe do some hard polish, maybe pinch it out in some areas as well. But fairly quickly, you can get some other sort of nice undulations in the form that will read pretty nice in the normal map as well. But yeah, so that's basically all we need to do for detailing this out. I decided to go a little more simple and just do those huge kind of dings and cracks, and then paint in a lot of those details in 3D Coat. But yeah, feel free to kind of add a little more sort of form variation in your normal map when you are creating your one. So the only other thing I want to show you guys really quickly before ending this lesson is how to basically export this all out and get this ready for retopology. So just two things we need to do. One, we need to export the high poly mesh, and then the other thing we need to do is export the decimated mesh. So I'm going to kind of show you this with this sort of showpiece right here. Just to export it as is, you just hit export, and then name whatever you want it to be, and that will be the high-res version. As long as you make sure that in the geometry you have like the highest resolution selected or whatever. But now for decimated, you're going to want to do the following cycle. First of all, you're going to want to go to Z plugin, click on Decimation Master. And then what you do is you click Pre-Process Current. It'll take a second to pre-process that. Go back to Decimation Master, then you hit Decimate. And basically, you want to kind of keep cycling this, kind of keep doing this, keep pre-processing it, and then decimating it. And you want to find sort of a middle ground where you don't lose too much of the details or too much of the raw form that you're going to need for retopology, but you also don't want the file to be so sort of big that it's going to be too taxing for your computer while you're doing the retopo. So there you go. So you'll see even at this point I might have gone a little too far, but maybe actually this might still be okay. Maybe when I'm in Maya, I'll still be able to figure that out. And now when I look at the active points 91, instead of before, this form was probably something similar to what this is, which was 287. So in Maya, that would be pretty difficult to make a retopo on your computer. At least my computer, it struggles a little bit. So that's why you definitely want to do Decimation Master as well. So then once you found that sort of that good middle ground through Decimation Master, you then export another version and just be sure to make an abbreviation at the end or some kind of thing at the end where it then says DEC, like decimated. But yeah, so that's what you want to do. Go ahead and make the high-res version and the decimated version. And then what we're going to do next lesson is one at a time. We're going to then go ahead and do the retopo and create the finalized base mesh with all the UVs in it. Alrighty, stay tuned.